everybody. Happy Wednesday morning. Jared Sandler with you, getting ready for a Rangers Q&A. Remember, we are just 2 days away from opening day. The Rangers and Rockies, 7:05 first pitch, the first ever pitch at Globe Life Field. Maybe a few minutes after that. Pregame coverage on the Fan at 6:30. All right, got a conversation with CJ Nitkowski that we'll also release on the channel. Eric Nadel tomorrow. We had one with Emily Jones on Monday. It's a lot of Rangers content here to get you ready for Rangers baseball. Would certainly appreciate if you'd share, like, subscribe, whatever it is you'd like to do. I'd certainly appreciate it. All right, solicited questions on Twitter, Reddit, Facebook. I've compiled your questions, and I'm ready to go. So for those of you who send in questions, I appreciate it. For those of you who intended to but didn't get them in on time, I'll do my best to answer them through whatever social media platforms I saw them on. But then also, let's say you hadn't submitted a question just yet, you can always reach out to me on Twitter at Jared Sandler. All right. So let's start with this. This one comes from What's in a Surname. How do you and other DFW media interview the players since we can't go into the clubhouse? So a procedural question for sure. So it's a good question. Zoom. We have scheduled Zoom interviews multiple times a day, so it's not as personal as a one-on-one. It's not it's not. You don't have the ability to, really have those real conversations, at least from a broadcaster standpoint, that can help us get the stories that, we want to be able to tell on air. But, that's just the situation. It is what it is. From Chris, and this is the most common question. Chris asked this, another user on Reddit I've known it all. Brant Swafford and Josh Allen all ask more or less the same question. Chris is about Elvis. The other threes are about Rugi and just the leash that they have in a 60-game season. So we'll start with Chris. He wants to know specifically whether or not the Rangers would be willing to bench Elvis if he gets off to a bad start. And then he has a follow-up as to whether Elvis would consider moving to third. So I don't know if Elvis would consider moving to third. I would tell you that, that unless his offensive performance really ticks up in a big way, you probably don't want a third baseman who's got a below average OPS, especially one that's hovering around 700. And the hope is that Isaiah Kiner-Falefa can give them, at least a league average OPS. The other thing is Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is outstanding defensively. Not sure what Elvis would look like at third. I think he'd be good at third, but that Isaiah can give you great defense, and the hope is a league average OPS. If Elvis gets off to a rough start, I think his leash is little longer than Rugi's, but because he's coming off back-to-back years, especially last year where the performance wasn't what you'd like, if Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is hitting, if there's a built-in solution, then yeah, I think the Rangers would be willing to do it. 60-game season, if they're playing well. Now, if they're, they get off to this horrific start, they're 5-15, and Elvis isn't playing well, I don't know that they would do it then. But if they're competing, if they're playing well, and Elvis is a weak link, then yeah, I think they'd consider it. As far as Rugi, same thing, and I think the Rugi leash is a little shorter, 2 weeks maybe. If he gets off to a bad start in 2 weeks, then they pull him. Now, understand, and Chris Woodward's articulated this, a bad start isn't necessarily hitting 200. A bad start is having bad at-bats, chasing pitches, not looking comfortable in the box. Because 2 weeks is not a big enough sample to simply look at the raw data. You can hit 210 over the first 2 weeks, but actually not be doing that poorly, and that those numbers are soon going to even out. But you can also hit 270 and get really lucky with some dribblers and maybe bad defense that, isn't an error, but, gives you credit for a hit on plays that should be made. You're taking bad swings. I don't know that they pull Rugi if he's hitting 270, but my point is you can, in a 2-week span, hit 270 and have horrible at-bats and hit 220 and actually have really good at-bats. So I think they're going to analyze more than just the surface numbers. All right, this from Alabama fan 22. What's your prediction for the year? I'm not a big prediction guy from a win-loss standpoint. I've learned over the years that hey, no one ever remembers it anyway. Especially when you're right, they don't remember. They always remember when you're wrong. But more than that, I mean, I don't know. It's I used to love predictions. Now it is what it is. But here's my prediction because I don't know how the heck to put a win total. I do think the Rangers will finish with at least 30 wins. So I think they'll be over 500, and I do think that with 2 weeks left in the season, they will be in a playoff race. And, I don't know what's going to happen over those 2 weeks, but I think if you get to mid-September, they will absolutely be in the playoff race. This is from Drew. Which unit will be the best? Starting pitching, bullpen, hitting, defense, or base running? To me, it's between starting pitching and base running. This is a very good base running team. They led the American League in stolen bases last year. It's an emphasis for them, not just stolen bases, but utilizing their speed. So I think that this is a very good base running team. But I'll go with starting pitching. They got two guys who finished with Cy Young votes last year. In the top 10. Corey Kluber's won a couple of Cy Youngs. We're excited about the starting pitching. I'll give the edge to starting pitching, but that base running isn't that far behind. This from Chris. If a player at the alternate training site, Globe Life Park, needs to be called up, will they be significantly less game ready than in previous years? I imagine it will be tough to get back into game action, unlike usual years where they'd be playing a AAA or AA game or games leading up. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to necessarily quantify it, and I think it's going to be different player to player. Maybe a player who just doesn't have the ability to focus and remain locked in will be less prepared than someone who's maybe a little more mature in that way and is able to remain focused. But yeah, with that said, it's not like they're going to be playing games every day to keep them, to keep them as game ready as they previously would have been. So I don't know how to quantify it. And baseball's a weird sport. You got guys who come back from injury, take 3 rehab games, they don't play that well, or they go 0 for 9 and they come back and they're able to light up the big league. So I don't think it's like a guarantee that they're not going to perform as well off the bat, but I do think that's a challenge that a lot of teams, while focusing on their a major league club, are going to have to spend some time making sure that their taxi squad is as fresh and ready as possible. It's definitely going to be an interesting wrinkle for teams that truly have to dig into that. From Cam, how do you think this year's trade deadline will play out? How will teams determine whether to buy, sell based off condensed schedule? Where do the Rangers fit in this scenario? Cam, that's a big question. That's one of the big questions I have for this season. Because I think in a 162-game season, you'd imagine that July 31st rolls around. Maybe the Rangers are like they were last year where, they're kind of in the middle, but you think they're probably trending in a direction where it makes sense to sell, but their record doesn't totally justify it. But at least you have 4 months of evidence to inform you of the decision. This year it's tough. You got 1 month, 1 month and change. And if you're a game up on a playoff spot or a game back, it's going to be awfully tough to sell. And I bring up the Rangers again. Obviously, it's the team we're focusing on, but they do have a lot of sellable candidates. Shin-Soo Choo, Lance Lynn, Corey Kluber, Mike Minor, all guys who are free agents to be, and Choo and Minor and Lynn and Kluber who have no more than this year and next year on their contract, and would be of interest and maybe be able to bring back some value. So it's going to be a really tough decision. I think that what John Daniels and company would like is for the Rangers to get off to a great start, so they don't even toy with the idea of selling. But if they're stuck in the middle, what's going to be tough is if you're grouped in with 6 other teams all within a game of a playoff spot. Yeah, I mean, you're right there. You've got a great shot, but it's tough. 6 teams. It's not like it's you and one other team jockeying for a spot, and you can size up that team, you can size up your team. Like the Rangers did in 2015. Their record wasn't good at the trade deadline, but they sized up their team and they thought, hey, we think there's a burst coming here. But they were able to do that after 4 months of evidence to show them what they were and what they weren't. What they weren't, not what they weren't were. So yeah, that's going to be a tough decision. My guess is there's not going to be as much action, just league wide. You're also trading guys just for 1 month as opposed to 2 months, and maybe that gets teams off the same page in terms of value. So my guess is the trade action is a little lighter. And my guess is the Rangers kind of fall into that trend, whether it's in a buy or sell position. From Tokuseki, can you recall the last year the Rangers' pitching performance was better than their hitting? Well, I don't know that there's ever been a year going into the season where we have so highly valued their pitching in comparison to their hitting. Certainly there were years where their hitting wasn't very good, but that was early on in the franchise's history when the pitching wasn't very good either. Really since the team moved to the new ballpark, I guess the old ballpark in 1994, it's been a team identified by their hitting. Now, they had some years last decade where maybe depending on what metrics, you want to use, their pitching was as good, maybe better. Like, I think it was 2013. They ended up with, perhaps a better rotation than lineup, but not talent-wise. That lineup underperformed talent-wise. This is the first time I think the pitching has had an edge on paper talent-wise over the hitting in this way in quite some time. Brady wants to know, when do you think there will be any fans at all, or if at all? Hopefully this year, but my guess, Brady, to be honest with you, is next year. From Harrison, will Jose Leclerc be the closer the entire season? Harrison, I think so. And Brian has a similar question. Haven't heard much on Leclerc. How was his summer camp, and do you expect him to have a better season this year? Yeah, I think so. I'd be lying to you if I told you that Leclerc absolutely dominated summer camp inner squads. But again, I don't know how to translate that information because guys are oftentimes working on stuff and not pitching to a scouting report, not pitching to the hitter, if that makes sense. They're going up there saying, hey, I'm going to throw X amount of this pitch, and I'm going to throw them in situations I normally wouldn't. I just want to throw those pitches. But I do think that last year was a learning experience, and we always hear about sophomore slumps for guys. Well, I think that to some degree that was what Jose Leclerc experienced. I know it wasn't his second year in the big leagues, but really probably his second full year. I'm hopeful that he's going to be able to bounce back. They need that because there are a lot of question marks in the bullpen, not necessarily all pointing in the wrong direction. Like for instance, I think Jonathan Hernandez is a question mark, but I also think that he's going to be a super stud. We just, we don't know for sure. Bullpen pitchers are volatile year to year, but I really believe in Jonathan Hernandez. But they need Jose Leclerc to keep things steady in the back end so they can then worry about building the bridge between the starters and the relievers. I would say if Jose Leclerc falters, then Jonathan Hernandez might be the guy they go to. All right, from Chad, are there team-to-team transactions, trades, trade deadline? How will the Rangers use their starters to start the season, and will that be the plan for the season? Openers in play? ? Yeah, so a lot of questions in here. Yeah, openers are in play unless like Kyle Gibson or Jordan Lyles matches up horribly with the team's 1, 2, and 3 hitters. I don't think those are the types of starters you would utilize an opener for, certainly not for minor Lynn Kluber. Usually those are the guys like Ariel Hirado or Adrian Sampson, guys who you're not sure if they're major league starting pitchers. They're kind of in between AAA and big league level, or maybe they are they're a big league pitcher, but they're a clear number 5. But the 5 the Rangers have, I don't think the intention is to use an opener. Other teams I think will, and I think we'll see maybe an increased usage of openers. But I don't know that the Rangers will fall into that department just because of the talent they have in the rotation. I think the Rangers are going to ride their starters as much as they can with only 12 or so starts. They're not going to do anything too cavalier. I don't know that they're going to have a quicker trigger with guys in general. Now, if they're not performing well, I think you'll see more of an emphasis in general on getting to the bullpen and slowing things down, whereas you're going to let things ride out over 162 games because you got to worry more about the next game, the next series, the next week, and keeping relievers rested. But with 30 men on the roster to start the season and a bigger bullpen, the importance of the games, they might have a shorter leash on pitchers start to start. And then as far as transactions, they can work with, internally with their taxi squad, and they can take guys who aren't even on the taxi squad and add them to it, which is sort of the pool of players who you're likely to call up when there's a need, injury, poor performance, whatever the case might be. But as I mentioned earlier, as far as team-to-team transactions, trades, my guess is it's going to be lighter activity than normal. But that's just a guess. We don't know. We've never really seen this before. From Dan, will Nelson Cruz be eligible for the Rangers Hall of Fame? I would imagine so, and I would hope he would get in there. I speak to so many of his teammates, and none of them harbor any ill will towards Nelly. And they all say we wouldn't be there without Nelly. So I hope he gets the credit, the love that he deserves, because Nelly was a big part of those teams. Uh, Question from Aaron: if you were a ball player, which team would you be on? The Rangers. What number? Well, I always wore number 1 because I was born on May 1st, and growing up, it was always the smallest jersey, and I was never that big. If I wasn't number 1, because I don't necessarily love the attention of being number 1, maybe a number like 21 or 24 like Ken Griffey Jr. Position, as an outfielder, I'm a lefty, so I can't play second. I'm not tall enough to play first, as a center fielder, but, playing any level beyond high school, probably would have moved to left field. And stats, be able to run, going to sneak a few home runs in maybe, but, someone who will use the whole field and more of a traditional hitter, not new age uppercut swinging hitter. Not because I don't believe in that. I'd love to go back and replay my baseball career with more of an aggressive swing like that, but that just wasn't a thing when I was playing. What's the player's reaction to the piped-in crowd noise from Hash Brown? It's a good question. I think that their reaction is, that it's different, but they like it. I think they prefer this over a sterile environment. I saw someone recently comment, players are so egotistical that they have to have people cheering for them. I don't think it's that. I don't think they care about, that from the egotistical side. I think they're just so conditioned to having some kind of environment that, any sort of environment helps them return to normalcy. So I don't think if you took it away, they would be up in arms screaming and complaining, but I think they, it doesn't bother them and they enjoy having it, if that makes sense. From Nate, how do they like the new playing surface? So far, so good. I think they're still trying to figure out certain, intricacies and nuances, but as far as the way their bodies feel, to a man, I haven't heard any of them, on the record or even in conversations I've had off the record, share any negative thoughts. They really like it. They love the new technology, and that's the thing is, what I said when the Rangers announced that they were going to have an artificial surface, and there were a lot of complaints from people. I understand, people just traditional, they love the grass. I get it. But you'd rather have high-quality turf than grass that you can't grow and be low-quality grass. That's what some teams like the Diamondbacks dealt with. That's why the Diamondbacks made the switch. And we have people these days figuring out how cars can drive themselves. I think the technology has come a long way in terms of the ability to create a playing surface that is much more replicable to grass in terms of the effect of the ball and the body, and I think that this new technology with the coconut husk certainly achieves that. Heron wants to know if I'll visit his doppelganger and take a selfie. If I'm allowed down in that area, it's pretty strict on where we are and are not allowed to be, and as of now, I'm not allowed to be in that area. So as of now, probably the answer is no. From Jacob, what are the minor leaguers doing? That's a great question. So the guys who are not on the 30-man roster but are on the 60-man roster will go to Globe Life Park once the season starts and work out there and stay ready to go in condition. The guys who aren't on the 60, some of them, a small few, have probably been informed, hey, stay ready because we might be adding you to the 60 at some point. And then the rest of the guys, they're going through workout plans. The Rangers minor league development team are meeting with these guys regularly over Zoom, over the phone, making sure they've got the equipment they need, basically staying on top of them, like online schooling in a way. And then in the fall, instead of a typical Arizona Fall League, I think they're going to expand it. That's an opportunity for some of the young players to get extra repetitions in. I think they're going to expand the Arizona Fall League to have a longer schedule to give these guys more reps. But there's no doubt that not having a minor league season definitely hurts the development or has the potential to hurt the development of these guys. And it'll be interesting to see on the other side of this, do guys improve? When we look at their 2019 stats versus their 2021 stats, and does it delay the arrival of certain players? A guy like Oslevis Basabe or Luis Angel Acuna or Chris Cease or Ricky Vanasco, Hans Kraus, how does their timeline get affected? And then finally from Brent, if the Rangers don't make the playoffs, what would you consider a successful season? Maybe not just wins and losses, but rebuilding the team. Yeah, Brent, that's exactly where my head's at because I'd love for them to make the playoffs. I want to have confidence that some of the guys who we believe can be a part of the future, perform at a high level. And over 162 games, you have more of a confidence that it's real than over 60 games. But we have 60 games, so that's what we got to work off of. So whether it's Rugi showing that he is the guy at second and he can achieve more consistency, or Gallo matching what he did last year, Willie Calhoun, Nick Solak, those guys having big years. Those are the things. Leody Taveras, if he gets a chance, like seeing him be able to hang as a 21-year-old at the big league level, knowing that there are better things to come. Those are the things that I'm going to look for and ultimately deem this year a success or not a success. Yes, I want to make the playoffs, but I think the best years are still ahead, and in order to get to those best years, you need the growth of these young guys. All right, I appreciate all the questions. Thanks so much. I always enjoy doing this. We'll try to do this maybe once every couple weeks during the season. Of course, you can always reach out to me at Jared Sandler on Twitter. Hope you have a great day. Looking forward to opening day on Friday, the game tonight against the Rockies. We'll talk to you soon.